Welcome everyone to the periodic table of history. We are studying history in 4 dimensions, and this week we're going to talk about Jehoash, the 13th king of northern Israel, or Samaria. He reigned from 798 to 782 BC, and then based upon the regnal year, or Tishri or Nisan start season, he could be 798 to 781 BC. And the 798 BC date is absolutely known. So Jehoash starts off in 2 Kings 13, verse 10. In the 37th year of Joash, king of Judah, began Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, to reign over Israel and Samaria, and reigned 16 years. So there's a little bit of confusion right there in the name. And for me, it makes it a little bit easier to remember that these are descendants from Jehu. Jehu is the one that abolished Baal worship in Israel. That was a good thing that he abolished Baal worship, but he kept on serving the 2 golden calves from Jeroboam. Jehu, Jehoahaz, and Jehoash are all from the line of Jehu. And those are all in Israel, Samaria. Now the other king of Judah is Joash, and we'll go into the periodic table of history so that we can dispel all confusion there. 11. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He departed not from all the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel sin, but he walked therein. So that is the sad state of affairs once again. Idolatry is clearly being a problem in Samaria at this time. It just compounds upon itself over and over again, and we just keep on seeing the idolatry come, which was the direct edict away from God. God saying, I'm a jealous God, and there it is right in our face over and over again with these kings. In verse 12, and the rest of the acts of Joash, now I'm writing Jehoash there in parentheses, and all that he did, and his might wherewith he fought against Amaziah, king of Judah. Are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel? Well, see, we have to dispel our confusion right here. Now, we know a title is given, King of Israel and King of Judah. And we can see right here that this Joash is someone who fought against the king of Judah, Amaziah. And so these are 2 different people. There's a lot of confusion with this one, and so what we'll do is just go into the periodic table of history right now and figure out who is who. Here's the overall look of the periodic table of history, and we are going to go right in here into Israel and Judah. So we're going to zoom in, and I'm going to zoom in enough so that we can see both kingdoms. Maybe if we're about this close, we can see all the kings of Israel in the north and all the kings of Judah in the south. Each one of those boxes is a king, or I also put the prophets here because they were so very interesting. We're zooming in to Israel over here, and this king that we're studying is Jehoash. The spelling is very similar to Joash, and that's a problem. And so what I'm going to do is give us a look at going over to the other side. We have Jehoaz right here on this box, and then Israel is over here, but there's a Joash right here. That becomes a confusing problem. Okay? And so let's right off the bat understand that this Jehoash is separate from this Jehoash. Do you see him there? Okay. And then this scripture that we just went over, it talks about Joash fighting Amaziah, the king of Judah. And so that's really what we have going on here. I'm going to select this one. This is who we're talking about. And this one. These are living at the same time. Those guys are living at the very same time. And there they are again. But this is who we're talking about, this king of Jehoash. And I mentioned before, if I go up, here's Jehu, and then you go to the next king. It's over here. I'll click on the left side. Here's Jehoahaz, and then here's Jehoash, descendants from Jehu. Verse 12 says this Joash, whom I'm naming Jehoash, was very mighty, and he fought against Amaziah, king of Judah. And then what we have to realize is the scribes at this time are writing with scrolls. And so they're writing some detail in their scroll, and then they're stopping, and they're rolling that scroll up. The next thing that we start seeing is the life of Elisha, which is embedded with this king, Jehoash. And so it's like they did this really small abstract of Jehoash, rolled up the scroll, and then they did a more in-depth story on Elisha. But since the prophet Elisha was talking to King Jehoash, then we get the biography of Jehoash at the same time. You'll figure out what I mean by that at the end, because we're going to skip verse 13 here and go on to the biography of Elisha. And that's in verse 14. Now Elisha was fallen sick of his sickness, whereof he died. And Joash, see I'm putting Jehoash in parentheses there, the king of Israel, that's very key, came down unto him and wept over his face and said, O my father, the chariot of Israel, and the horsemen thereof. And Elisha said unto him, Take a bow and arrows. And he took unto him bow and arrows. So we get this very rich history right here. It's not hieroglyphics. We don't have to guess, interpolate the meaning of it. We don't have to know the Coptic dialect and take it back to the Egyptian dialect and translate it out with the Rosetta Stone or anything here. This text here is extraordinarily clear to us. We have person, places, things, ideas, story, very rich detail in the story, the bows and the arrows. And Elisha said unto him, Take bow and arrows. And he took unto him bow and arrows. And he said to the king of Israel, Put thine hand upon the bow. And he put his hand upon it. And Elisha put his hand upon the king's hands. So there's an interesting one, that you have a pseudo-evil king who has some respect for the prophets. And then you have the prophet who is of Jehovah. And this Jehoash has some, out of all the people that he could have gone to for advice, he goes to Elisha, the one who actually has communion with the living God. And you see that even though he's a wicked king, he's getting counsel from a godly man who's getting counsel from God. And then Elisha puts his anointing by his hand to the king's hand on the bow. So all of that is very interesting to look at the details in the text. And then in 17, and he said, Open the window eastward, and he opened it. Then Elisha said, Shoot, and he shot. And he said, The arrow of the Lord's deliverance, and the arrow of deliverance from Syria. For thou shalt smite the Syrians in Aphek, till thou have consumed them. So Aphek, that was a city that came up a couple videos ago. We know where Aphek is. And this makes me wonder, since you have the Moabites on the east and you have the Syrians on the east, I wonder if the direction was where God was going to deliver. Wherever the arrow shot was where God was going to deliver, and it happened to go a little bit northeastward, and so the deliverance was against Syria. See, if it was southeastward, I wonder if that would have affected who Israel was delivered from the Moabites perhaps, but I'm not sure. But Aphek is that city on the east of Galilee, so let's get our bearing on where this is so we can understand this story in depth and to a great degree. We go in our periodic table of history time machine back in time, and now we're flying over Israel. You can see the purple there. That is Syria expanding its way all along the east of the Jordan River and crossing it and smashing through Israel all the way to Gath. And Gath is way over here. I have it here. I can, see where Gath is. Yeah, we see where Gath is. We learned in the previous videos that King Hazael sliced through Israel so far that they were even conquering Gath and even smashed to Jerusalem, but was bribed and then went back. So really the only people that are safe are the ones in the strongholds and the walled cities. So there's King Hazael, northeast. Ephek, that's the city that was mentioned here. I'm going to click around that. You can see it. It's over there east of the Sea of Galilee. And then King Jehoash is right here in Samaria with his counterpart, King of Israel, King Amaziah, there in the south. So that gives us some really good perspective on this time, what's going on politically, geopolitically. The 12 tribes of Israel are right there. We'll put their boundaries on there, and that gives us some really good understanding of what's going on. So for whatever reason, Elisha said deliverance was going to be against the Syrians. So in verse 18, and he said, take the arrows, and he took them, and he said unto the king of Israel, smite upon the ground, and he smote thrice, and stayed. And the man of God was wroth with him, and said, thou shouldest have smitten 5 or 6 times, then hadst thou smitten Syria till thou hadst consumed it. Whereas now thou shalt smite Syria but thrice. So God was giving Elisha the direction, with the direction of the arrow, and God was giving Elisha the amplitude through the king, with his hand on that bow that the king shot the arrow from. The previous story is quite serious and changed the trajectory of Israel. Now, the next story contrasts greatly and is kind of a funny story that we can laugh at. It's comical. It is very good in light of just seeing our whole world change in the last story. So it's a funny story about a funerary party trying to conduct a funeral and being scared away by an attack from the southern Moabites. And the body of the dead man fell down into the tomb of Elisha and touched the bones of Elisha. So the dead man rose again, and this happened around the time of Hazael of Damascus to the north. So we have a real funny depiction of that. I just wonder about this quite a bit, because you have this dead man that's in the tomb, and when he comes up, he doesn't have any to it but to ask where he is or something. He just fell asleep and now he's awake again, but inside a tomb, comes alive again, and then where is everybody? Everybody's like running away. He has to figure out that there's some Moabites after him and then run the other way. Is he just going to ask these bandits, where am I? Could you direct me to the nearest 7-Eleven maybe or something? In verse 24, so Hazael, king of Syria, died, and Ben-Hadad, his son, reigned in his stead. And this shows me that there's a little bit of overlap of responsibility. That is, there must be some responsibility from father to son to have some jurisdiction over this time, because Hazael died in the year 804 BC, but Jehoash started his reign in 798 BC. So there's a lot of speculation on this certain champion that was in the previous biography, that perhaps the champion of Jehoahaz is Jehoash. And there's other people that say maybe the champion was a spiritual champion like Elisha. And then others still say the champion in the previous story may be the king of Assyria who was attacking Damascus and then giving Israel relief. But anyway, we see a little bit of an overlap of the king's reigns right here. And Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, took again out of the hand of Ben-Hadad, the son of Hazael, the cities which he had taken out of the hand of Jehoahaz, his father, by war. 3 times did Joash beat him and recovered the cities of Israel. So there's the fulfillment of the biography of Elisha and Elisha's prophecies. And notice the Ben-Hadad here again. This is going to be Ben-Hadad 3, because we have Ben-Hadad 1 that we looked at, then Ben-Hadad 2, then Hazael, and then this is Ben-Hadad 3, 4 generations in the line of Damascus. But this is yet another reason to have an indicator that Joash in the Bible is Jehoash of northern Israel. It's at the time of Ben-Hadad 3, which is down in the 700s BC. Damascus had taken Gath of the Philistines. The Philistines were pretty tough fighters, so these people of Damascus must have been incredible strategists to have defeated that city. And so Gath was already taken, and then that was in southwest Israel. So I mean, this means that Jehoash had a lot to do to recover Israel from Damascus in the north. So as all of this is unfolding, there's more geopolitical ramifications that are going on. We'll go to 2 Kings 14:8. Then Amaziah, that's the king of Judah, then Amaziah sent messengers to Jehoash of Samaria, the son of Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, king of Israel, saying, "Come, let us look one another in the face." So he's saying, let's stand toe to toe and see who's a better king. Now, Israel is huge. It had 10 tribes, and then you have Judah in the south, and Levi went with Judah in the south. And you have some stragglers also at this time. Benjamin is real close. And some of the tribes that were over east of Jordan have been pushed as refugees into Judah at this point. And so Israel is actually pretty big in comparison to Judah. So you have this small power talking to the big power and saying, hey, let's fight. Verse 9, and Jehoash, the king of Israel, sent to Amaziah, king of Judah, saying, the thistle that was in Lebanon sent to the cedar that was in Lebanon, saying, give thy daughter to my son to wife. And there passed by a wild beast that was in Lebanon and trode down the thistle. So he's given this really powerful word image. Thou hadst indeed smitten Edom, and thine heart hath lifted thee up. Glory of this, and tarry at home. For why shouldst thou meddle to thy hurt, that thou shouldst fall, even thou and Judah with thee? They're looking at the numbers, and Judah is definitely at mass disadvantage right here. And then let's go to our geography so we can see a little bit of what's going on there in that scripture. It has a lot of geopolitical ramifications. Just a few generations before, Edom was with Judah and with Israel, but they had such a bad defeat that it seemed like that led to some very hurt feelings and some noses out of joints. And now Edom is an enemy of Judah. And so we get from the text that King Amaziah somehow had a victory over Edom. And now, well, he's filling up with pride, and pride comes before a fall. And so now King Amaziah is talking to King Jehoash of Samaria, and King Amaziah is saying, hey, I did such a good victory, I think I can whoop you also. And King Jehoash says, you have no idea of the technological breakthroughs we've had because of fighting with the Damascus, the Arameans, Syrians, what we would say now. You have no idea. We've been fighting, we've been upgrading our tactics, we've been getting stronger. Don't even talk to me. That's what Jehoash is saying. In verse 11, but Amaziah would not hear. Therefore, Jehoash, king of Israel, went up, he and Amaziah, king of Judah, looked one another in the face at Beth Shemesh, which belongeth to Judah. And Judah was put to the worse before Israel, and they fled every man to their tents. So it wasn't just bad news bears and all that kind of stuff. No, this was really bad for Judah. And Beth Shemesh is just a tiny bit to the west and south of Jerusalem. So that's in great proximity to Jerusalem. With the defeat of Judah and Amaziah, now there's nobody defending Jerusalem. And Jehoash, king of Israel, took Amaziah, king of Judah, the son of Jehoash, the son of Ahaziah, at Bethshemesh, and came to Jerusalem, and brake down the wall of Jerusalem from the gate of Ephraim unto the corner gate, 400 cubits. Now, using our 1.5 conversion, that's 600 feet. 600 feet of wall is destroyed right there. And I kind of wonder if that's shown in the archaeology anywhere. So the cities that are secure against from all these attacks are the walled cities, and now Jerusalem has a big chunk smashed down in the wall. Now it's defenseless even to Damascus or Moab or Edom or the Philistines. It just found itself in a really bad way. So pride comes before a fall, for sure. The walls of Jerusalem had held for 200 years. We're down from the 900s down into the 700s now. Okay, and this was very terrible. This is brother against brother. And he took all the gold and silver and all the vessels that were found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the king's house and hostages, and returned to Samaria. So now the wealth of the south of Judah is now up in Samaria. All that gold, all that stuff that Solomon did, all that Queen of Sheba stuff, all that House of David, all that wealth, all of that is now transferred away from Jerusalem. All those people, all the hurt. Would you have been able to live during this time? When I study this more and more, I think the people that lived through this were pretty incredible. The soldiers of Jehoash are very happy with their leader as they take the wives of Jerusalem off to Samaria. See, someone who gave them the victory made them wealthy. But the men of Jerusalem are crying as they watch their wives being taken away as slaves. And they can't do anything about it. They don't have an army anymore, and their king is vanquished. So those women that are being taken away, they're wondering what their new situation is going to be like. Are they going to go to a household that treats them well, or one that treats them like a dog? So in verse 15, now the rest of the acts of Jehoash, which he did, and his might. See, there is his might again. So he must have been a pretty strong guy there. That word might is used to describe him multiple times now. And how he fought with Amaziah, king of Judah, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Jehoash slept with his fathers and was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. And Jeroboam, his son, reigned in his stead. Okay, so now we have the introduction to Jeroboam 2. Because we have the original split of Jeroboam 1 and Rehoboam right after Solomon. That was in 930 BC. So there's Jeroboam 1 in Israel. And now we have a new guy named Jeroboam. So we're going to call him Jeroboam 2. Well, we read the iteration of the death of Jehoash here, just like we read the similar lines from 2 Kings 13. The scribes were putting all this together, and they were rolling the scrolls and then piecing the scrolls back together. That was about 450 BC. They were putting these scrolls together, so we get that really small abstract of Jehoash, and then we get that abstract of Elisha. But Elisha is talking about Israel fighting with the enemies around, which then a new scroll is written down right there to explain the geopolitics of Jehoash that it already said had just died. And so we get back to verse 13. See, that's the part of the last scroll. We get to 2 Kings 13:13. And Joash, that's Jehoash, slept with his fathers, and Jeroboam sat upon his throne, and Joash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. See, so that's how this text is working together. We're seeing the end of one scroll, and then we're reading the other scroll. So we had to go back there to pick up that verse 13:13. So what is our dash going to be on our tombstone? What is our dash going to be? It's all the little micro bits of all the decisions that we make. And there is some archaeology that is so fun to go into. We have the Assyrian kings list of Adad-Nardi III. And Adad-Nardi III is in the periodic table of history here that he reigned from 811 to 783. Well, that's right there over the same time period as Hazael's transfer to Ben-Hadad III, and also the Jehoash and Ahaziah, right there, their reigns. They're all coming together, and the archaeology is all fitting like it's supposed to. So that's Adad-Nirari III with that beautiful piece of archaeology that talks about the kings list. And the Assyrians did pretty well at chronicling their kings. And then we also have Jehoash the Samaritan. Jehoash. So we have one word that talks about Jehoash. He's actually there on this stele. And then we actually have Samaria. So another cultural reference. And so that's on the Omri stela of Adad-Nirari III. He's talking about all the princes that he conquered, and he lists Joash of Samaria in there. Then even on top of that, we have another piece of archaeology. It's Sabah's conquest stele, and that is the conquest stele, the story of Adad-Nirari III. This tablet says, I commanded the troops of Assyria to march to the land Hattai, Israel, Syria. I crossed the Euphrates in flood. I commanded my troops to march to Damascus. I confined Mari Ben-Hadad III in Damascus. He brought to me 100 talents of gold and 1,000 talents of silver as tribute. The inscribed stone of Nergalaris, governor of the lands Hindanu. So that's the translation of this stone, and it talks about Israel right there. Interesting. This king Adad-Nirari III is crossing the Euphrates at flood times. Well, that would be spring, right? That's when the snow melts, goes down the mountains, goes into the river, overflows the river, and there's floods. Isn't it fun to see all this archaeology? We can just see how all the history of this land is just so intertwined together. And we can use the archaeology to leap from one king to another all the way down to the present. So would you have ruled differently than Jehoash? If you would have made different decisions, what would they have been? You can write those into the comments section. And as always, have an awesome attitude and have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for being here.